What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are back with Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four. So let's just get right into it, man, because dude, the ending of this story, man, son. It's like one of the greatest moments ever in the history of Marvel Comics. Check this out. So what this initially does is it picks up with the Future Foundation. The reason why the art looks like this is because the story is designed to be told from a child's perspective. So the art reflects a kind of childlike art. Now, one of the things that you guys may recall is that in the previous stories that we did regarding Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four, that what had happened is the Kree had invaded Earth. They had launched attack against Earth. While that was happening, the forces of Annihilus were basically launching their attack in order to allow the Annihilation Wave to enter in from the negative zone. So it was a multi-pronged strike, albeit that both forces were unaware of the other. But the kicker about all this is that Valeria Richards did exactly what she was supposed to do, which was hit the panic button and teleport the Future Foundation from the Baxter Building to a safe location, which turns out to be Latveria, where Dr. Doom's at. But the thing about this is that with this meeting here, you have this conversation between Valeria and Nathaniel Richards, the father of Reed. Now remember, Nathaniel comes from the future, but nobody's supposed to know, right? No one's supposed to know he's from the future. Valeria figured it out, and she figured it out because of the fact that she's so incredibly intelligent. So while Nathaniel thought he was being secretive, Valeria figured out all the clues. And so it's one of those things where she's like, you shouldn't be going around doing that. And he's like, why? And she's like, because you could screw everything up. Temporal anomalies, cascading events, collapsing time streams, like you should know all of this stuff. You're a time traveler. And he's like, well, that's not necessarily exactly how it happens. Besides, if you knew that and you had figured that out, why did you go and make a secret deal with Dr. Doom? And then she's like, well, I guess you knew about that because you're from the future. And he's like, no, because all hope lies in Doom. Nathaniel says, I sent the future Franklin to you. Like, I'm the one who sent him to you so that he could have that conversation and give you that piece of information so that you could hold on to it for when it was necessary to implement that, i.e. your meeting with Victor Von Doom. And so it's a cool thing because he asks her, do you remember the rest, right? The dead must not be forgotten. The future man must return to save the past, right? Kind of hitting at this idea that Nathaniel is the future man. So he tells her, this is what we're going to do. And Nathaniel and Valeria basically form a plan. Now, when they go and they meet with Christophe Renard, the adopted son of Dr. Doom, and Dr. Doom himself, Christophe is totally like flabbergasted by this. Like, wait a minute, what is your idea here? Now, of course, you have the alternate version of Reed Richards who's here, kind of the last surviving member of the Council of Reeds, the ones that sort of initiated all of this in the first place. And again, it's one of these things where this guy has control of Dr. Doom, right? Remember, he slapped the collar around Dr. Doom's neck so that if Dr. Doom disobeys what this alternate version of Reed tells him, he'll lobotomize Doom on the spot, right? Like instantaneously, he'll take him out. The reality here and what they intend to do is to go back to the bridge, to basically reopen the bridge and then face off against the Mad Celestials and find a way to destroy them, right? To defeat the Mad Celestials so they never arrive on Earth. Because remember, all of this is because of Reed, that you had the Council of Reeds and you have Reed Richards himself. The main Marvel Universe Reed opened the portal. The Council of Reeds greeted him and then he traveled with the Council and learned that there's basically this group of Reed Richards across the multiverse who abandoned their families. That what they did is they solved problems across the multiverse. They turned entire universes into nothing more than just crop farms where they grow food for other universes to feed whole other universes. That's their thing. But one of those versions of Reed drew the attention of a universe's version of the Celestials who'd gone crazy with power and forced everybody to worship them as gods. Once they became aware of that Reed and by extension a portal that would grant them access to the multiverse, they did what anybody with extreme levels of power and no real checks and balances would do. They tried to expand that sphere of influence. That's what led to the fight with the Council of Reeds, and that is why we're where we are right now, is because of Reed opening the portal and meeting with the Council in the first place. Now, we are going to get a little more information about this, but one of the things Valeria does is she sneaks into the vault and she basically takes the ultimate nullifier. Now, for those of you guys who don't know about this thing is nuts. The ultimate nullifier is one of the most powerful weapons in existence, and in fact, Jonathan Hickman's going to clarify the ultimate nullifier to a degree, but the nullifier is an object, a device that if you use it and you channel it at somebody, you can wipe them from existence as if they never existed in the first place. It's crazy, right? It's just one of the most bonkers things ever in Marvel Comics. But the thing about this is that once they get to the bridge, they ultimately activate it and they're like, it's time to go in, right? It's time to enter this and see what's on the other side. Because the last time they were there, the Reeds were fleeing for their lives, right? They were just running to escape death from the Mad Celestials who were annihilating everything. Now, once they get in there, the Mad Celestials are still there, right? They're still present. Now, here's the thing to understand, right? You might be asking asking yourself, because for, I guess you could call it our time, like months have passed, like maybe almost a year has passed. So the question you have to ask yourself is, have the Celestials just been sitting there, like just standing there for like months, maybe even a year? The answer is yes and no. When it comes to this place, right, the Council of Reeds, it exists outside of space and time. So time doesn't apply here. So as far as the Mad Celestials are here, like these guys basically ran through a second ago and just came back out again, right? Like no real time has passed. That's how things work here, and that's why they've been there this entire time. But the crazy thing about this is that what it does is it jumps back to the meeting with Valeria and Nathaniel, and the two of them are kind of talking about everything that's going on. And what's happening here is they're talking about something called catastrophe theory, that the way that it's explained by Nathaniel is a series of ever-worsening ruinous events that individually represent a system-wide threat, but when combined constitute the permanent obliteration of said system. The system in this case is all of mankind. That what we're looking at here, right, the things that are taking place here, the annihilation wave entering into the fray after being released, the Kree launching their attack against Earth when Black Bolt basically escaped the fault, and essentially the Supreme Intelligence realized that Black Bolt of the Inhumans was still alive and wanted to wipe out the rest of the Inhumans, Reed going through the gate, all that kind of stuff, the War of the Four Cities, everything just keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse, and is all pointing to the complete and total obliteration of all of humanity. Now, of course, this leads to the most logical question, right? Like Valeria says, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but is it possible there are some holes in your theory? And Nathaniel asks, how so? And she says, well, why don't we just work to prevent one of the earlier bad things? And he interprets that to her saying, you mean stop the cascading nature of the event before it begins, i.e. stop Reed Richards from going through the gate. And the response to Nathaniel is, that cannot be done. There are some things that happen in this universe and in every universe that are constants. They always take place. There was no preventing the return of Black Bolt, and there was no preventing the Kree race from realizing Black Bolt had returned, that the Inhumans still existed in the universe and trying to destroy them. The war between the Kree and the Inhumans would always lead to the extermination of Earth. It's inevitable. And the only way that war can be held at bay is by Johnny Storm's annihilation wave. The reasons for it happening will vary. They won't always be the same. But in every single universe across the multiverse, at some point in time, the possibility of a dying Earth will spark the return of Galactus, and the Mad Celestials will attempt to destroy the universe as it holds the last reed of the Council of Reeds from them, right? Everything else, the creation of the Future Foundation, the War of the Four Cities, all of these things have only created more favorable conditions to do what must be done. And that's the kicker here, right? That those are all absolute things. These things always happen, that there's no avoiding it. And so that's when Valeria asked, then like, what's the best we can hope for? And the response to Nathaniel is to spread these events out, right? To ensure that like the invasion of the annihilation wave and the attack of the Kree and their war with the Inhumans and Galactus and the Mad Celestials, that it all just doesn't happen back to back to back to back to like all at one time, right? Because in every other timeline, that's seemingly when it happened. It all happened at once. The Kree launched their attack on Earth and went to war with the Inhumans as Galactus showed up when the Mad Celestials arrived. Like, it would always lead to the destruction of all of Earth and everybody on it. That always seems to happen. Now, this is one of the cool things about that, is because what we end up doing is jumping back to where everybody else is, right? Jumping back to like the bridge or to the Council of Reeds Citadel, whatever you want to call it, and the battle with the Mad Celestials. Now, initially, they won't let Dr. Doom do his thing. This alternate version of Reed, right? The last survivor of the Council of Reeds outside of the main Marvel Universe, that this guy believes that he can take all of this on his own. But the response of Valeria is, no, you have to let Dr. Doom go. This is the reason why she took the ultimate nullifier, because she needed a backup plan. She wanted to make sure this version of Reed would do exactly what she told him to. Remember, all hope lies in Doom. If Doom has an inhibitor collar around his neck, and at any given moment he could just be lobotomized, there ain't a whole lot of hope there. But like, if Dr. Doom is completely freed and he's allowed to do whatever it is that he needs to do, then all hope lies in Doom. Hence the reason for the nullifier. So once that's done and Dr. Doom is freed from his control, then it's on like Donkey Kong. Because one of the coolest things that goes on here is we switch to Franklin. Little Franklin Richards, this little kid. Now, I told you guys, Franklin Richards is powerful. He's ridiculously OP, and he always has been. The funny thing about this is he doesn't know how powerful he is. So what he says as he's talking to his friend Leech is he says, it's weird. I can hear them thinking and I think they're sick or something. Like, what should we do? So Franklin goes and talks to the Mad Celestials. Now, when they analyze him, what they realize is just how powerful Franklin is. Franklin Richards could annihilate these guys. That's exactly their fear and their concern. Now, this is how powerful Franklin is, that literally they try to blast Franklin Richards with energy. He basically blocks it, and then the energy turns to flowers. And he was like, why do you guys have flowers growing out of your head? Literally, he altered reality so that their attack was useless. Not only was their attack useless, it turned into something arbitrary. But here's the big thing behind this, and this is why I say guys like Mad Jim Jaspers are really, really powerful, because he can alter reality, but he has nothing on Franklin Richards. Franklin Richards is outside of all universal space. He's outside of space and time. He's literally in this citadel. The rules and the laws of physics do not apply here. So he literally is just a living embodiment of a godlike being. Now, the other part about this is that the Celestials, realizing how powerful he is, decide to attack his consciousness. And what they tell him is that you, Franklin Richards, are so powerful that you will live to see the end of the universe. When that time comes, we don't know what will happen, but you will outlive all things in existence if you choose to, right? The downside to this is you will outlive everyone you know and love, and those individuals who do know you will learn to hate you because of the fact that you're so powerful and you're not bound by age. It's just going to be a fundamental part of who you are. Now, we know that to be the case, partly because of another video that we're going to do with Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four after probably here in the next couple weeks, but also because of like a history of the Marvel Universe, that comic book line that Marvel wrote because of my awesome series that I made, that in turn establishes that Galactus and Franklin will be the two last living things in existence. At least that was the case until we got Al Ewing's indestructible, or what is it, Immortal Hulk, when basically the one below all kills everything in existence and then kills Franklin and kills Galactus and then just absorbs their power and lives on in the next universe and then kills everything there. But the important thing here is that in this moment, when Franklin's able to fight the Celestials off, they fire off a few of their fingers, which in turn are able to kind of hold the portal open. Now, the thing about this is that while it does lead to the rest of the Future Foundation basically vacating and getting out as fast as they can, that you have this conversation between Valeria and Dr. Doom. Now, there is something that's said here, right? There is a very important thing that's said here. We won't find out what it is right now. Instead, Dr. Doom tells her, get out of here. I will basically do what I can and I will hold these guys off. Now, she's like, how do you know that you'll survive? Like, how do you know that you'll make it? And the response of Doom is, because I am Doom, destroyer of worlds. What gods dare stand against me, right? Who would be so foolish as to challenge the power of Dr. Doom, which is just like a ridiculously amazing moment. Now, the reality here is that jumping back to the meeting that happened with Nathaniel and Valeria, they kind of go to like this sort of abandoned citadel and they have this really, really cool conversation. Now, the way this plays out is that they're basically looking at the series of events as they've happened. And what Nathaniel says is, a thing is going to happen soon. And when it does, that will be our saving grace. That's our ace in the hole. That's the means by which we will survive all of this. The problem is, by the time all this stuff happens, right, everything going on with like the Mad Celestials and all of that, if we don't buy time, then we're gonna be dead by the time that thing happens. And when that thing happens, it'll be too late to save any of us. So you have to find a way to buy us 27 minutes, Valeria. You have to find a way to make that happen. That's the reason why Dr. Doom is basically staying behind. That's the cool thing that goes on here, is because one of the things that takes place is you basically move or transition over to Dr. Doom and that alternate version of Reed, who are facing off against the Mad Celestials. Now, they're doing what they can, but the funny thing is that in order for Dr. Doom to be freed by that version of Reed demanded the ultimate nullifier, which was given to him by Valeria Richards. And so what he does is, in channeling the ultimate nullifier, we end up getting the caveat that goes along with this, that what Jonathan Hickman does is transition us back to the Council of Reeds when that version of Reed had attained the ultimate nullifier. And he was warned by the other members in the council, that thing will kill anybody who uses it. But one of the Reeds chimes in and says that's actually not true. It's a myth that the nullifier, while being the most powerful weapon in the universe, will always destroy the person using it. It can be used. The device requires complete focus and alignment of mind and purpose. If you fail to have that, it will destroy you. And that's exactly what happens. This version of Reed, in using the ultimate nullifier, his mind starts to wonder to what they could have done, how they could have fixed things. But because he loses loses his focus, he's destroyed by the ultimate nullifier that he's wielding, and the Mad Celestials continue to exist. So with Dr. Doom doing what he can against these guys and literally trying to hold them off, he basically just tells them, like, do whatever it is that you feel like you can do. There's nothing you can do that can destroy me. But the funny thing here is that as the bridge begins to falter, the Mad Celestials, in a moment of dire just straits, attack Dr. Doom, and he seemingly holds it off. The problem with this is that as everything seems to wind down, and while it does seem like the day is saved, the portal starts closing off. One of the Mad Celestials reaches in and pulls the portal apart, and in doing that, allows the Mad Celestials to enter into the main Marvel Universe. So at the end of the last video that we covered, where we talked about the Mad Celestials had arrived, this is how they got there, right? This is how they arrived there. It's really one of the most important parts of the story, and it's one that we didn't cover when we originally covered Hickman's Fantastic Four, which I kind of wish was something that we had done. But following this, we pick up with the Future Foundation as they're basically rescued by the Power Pack. For those of you guys who don't know who the Power Pack are, they're not overly important to this story. It's just basically a bunch of like really young kids operating as superheroes. But the whole thing behind this is that while you have like Franklin and the other members of really the Future Foundation and the Power Pack that are making their way towards what is in effect Saul's Anvil, the weapon that was constructed by those surviving members of the Council of Reeds in order to destroy the Mad Celestials, it still exists on Earth, but it's lacking the final power source, which is the annihilation wave, right? That last piece of energy that can be used to channel the whole thing, that you have Franklin just kind of being met by this disembodied voice. And he's ultimately just like, could you be quiet for a second, man? Like, could you shut the hell up? And that's when we end up finding out that it's basically his older self, right? Franklin from the future talking to his younger self. And so it's one of those things where he says, have you done what I asked? And Franklin, young Franklin says, yes, I keep it here next to my heart. Well, the problem is I had to use some of it. If I hadn't done that, then like the Mad Celestials would have killed everybody. And his adult self says, well, you can't help who you are. Hopefully it'll still be enough. And so literally his future self says it's almost time and then seemingly disappears away. At that point, the Future Foundation arrives at Saul's Anvil, which can we just say is one of the coolest names ever for a weapon. It's just like this giant just kind of building citadel that can destroy the Mad Celestials, or at least seems like it can. Now, the important thing here is that at Saul's Anvil, while they are missing the annihilation wave as the final power source, Johnny Storm and the Fantastic Four arrive. And because Johnny Storm is showing up with basically the cosmic control rod from the negative zone, which leads the annihilation wave, that's the power source they need, that now Saul's Anvil can be fired, right? The funny thing about this is that as you have young Franklin walking around with his future self kind of looks around and says, wow, right? Like the power of the sun channeled through a fixed point, buttressed by the earth itself. Saul's Anvil is the most powerful weapon ever constructed solely by man. It won't be enough. And as they're looking at all of this, the Mad Celestials arrive on the scene. And that's when future Franklin tells his younger self, this is going to hurt one bit. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we switch over to arguably one of the best moments ever in the history of Marvel Comics. So with the Mad Celestials arriving on Earth and with Galactus arriving around the same time, the Mad Celestials traveled to greet Galactus. And as they analyze him, they realize he's a world devourer, right? He's a Galactus. That he's not the first Galactus or the only Galactus. There's a Galactus in every single universe around the multiverse. But they're like, leave, right? Like, this does not concern you. It's not your business. We're here to destroy a world. Go back and consume your own worlds and call it a day. And Galactus literally says, no, right? I'm not going anywhere. Look into my mind and see that I know your purpose. Look there and see that Galactus stands against you. And when they realize Galactus knows what their purpose is, which is not simply to destroy this Earth, but to destroy the entirety of the universe, and that Galactus would stand against all of them, and that if Galactus needed the help, he would seek out the other cosmic entities. The Celestials immediately attack him, right? Now, as soon as that battle pops off, it's really more than just anybody can understand. It's just beyond anything, right? One of the Kree soldiers is talking to the Supreme Intelligence like, man, what do we do here, right? We've got these cosmic entities who are facing off against each other. Just the sheer amount of radiation they're bleeding off is more than our ships can handle, let alone if they actually fire off an attack against one another and that attack misses and hits us. It'll destroy our ship and that'll be the end of it. The Supreme Intelligence is like, yeah, get us out of here, man. We got to go. And then you have like Black Bolt, who does the only thing that he's ever useful for, which is just like go that way, right? Run away from the fight, because Black Bolt's useless. Like, I can't ever do anything. But the thing about this is that it's crazy, because Galactus kills one of the Celestials, right? He kills one of the Mad Celestials, destroys this guy. And in response to that, the remaining Mad Celestials merge. They combine. These guys go full on Megazord, son, right? When that happens, BAM! They destroy Galactus on the spot. They annihilate him, right? Galactus dead, right? Goes falling back down to the earth. That's the end of him. At that point, they turn their sights to like everybody else on Earth. Reed Richards, the Fantastic Four, the Future Foundation, right? It's drapes. Like they come descending down, but in that moment, Reed fires off, like uses the energy sources of all those different areas, right? The negative zone, old Atlantis, the blue area of the moon, the Forever City. He channels the energy from all those places into Saul's anvil and then combines it with the energy of the sun and then fires it off against the Mad Celestials, which is not enough to destroy them, but it is enough to break them apart from their combined form. The problem with Saul's anvil is twofold. One, if they fire it again, they could destroy the world, right? They could literally crack the world because they're drawing energy from the world itself. The other part of that though, is this a risk worth taking? Because the alternative is the Mad Celestials are going to kill them all. So in that moment, this is why I say, man, people are sleeping on Susan Storm, man. People don't understand how powerful Susan Storm is. She's like, everybody behind me, and just like puts up a force field and blocks the attack of the Mad Celestials. At that point, like Reed Richards tells Johnny Storm, get as hot as you possibly can, hotter than the sun with a cosmic control rod. He goes flying in, he attacks one of the Mad Celestials. It's enough to damage him, but the Mad Celestial heals. Then like one of the other ones attacks Johnny. Johnny's out of the fight. So at that point, there's no cosmic control rod to be used by anybody. Now, Reed Richards is trying to get Saul's anvil back up and running. The weapon system's offline. So literally, it's curtains, it's drapes, right? There's no coming out of this, man. Like the Mad Celestials are coming down, right? Susan Storm's holding up this force field, holding on for dear life, right? The Mad Celestials break through the force field, like they all fire at the same time. They destroy the force field, and they're like, there's the final interloper, right? Like Reed Richards will kill him, will annihilate the universe, and that'll be the end of it, right? Susan Storm conjures up kind of like a force field rod and like sends it flying through one of their hands, and that's when we harken back. Sansa, man, let me tell you something. That's when we harken back, right? So like the statement that was made when Valeria from the future came to visit her mom in the past, right? And she said, the coming days are going to be dark and full of loss. It will feel like everything is going to fall apart, that it'll shatter and everything will end. Only you can hold us together. Can you be strong, mother? Stronger than you've ever been before. And it's one of these crazy moments because like Susan Storm feels like everything's about to end. Reed's out of commission, Franklin Richards and all of them are knocked out, right? Like there's no one left to save them. Galactus is dead. This is it. It's just her standing there, just laying there with these Mad Celestials over top of her, getting ready to annihilate everything in existence. And they're just like, move yourself out of the way, move and live. We are destroying that final Reed. And she's like, nope, that's not gonna happen. But the crazy thing about this is we kind of get back to that monologue from her daughter where she says, there will be a moment when you're going to want to give up. You're going to want to let go. When you reach that point, look into the sky, look up and remember the price that was paid. And son, in one of the best moments ever in Marvel Comics history, son, Reed's like, what in the hell is that? Like, what's that light? And Susan's like, it's everything, Reed. It's our kids. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Franklin Richards from the future has returned. He has arrived in the present. And man, anybody who knows anything about the Fantastic Four, man, I'm telling you right now, the next video that we do, man, it's like the greatest moment ever in the history of Marvel Comics. Son. Man, I'll leave y'all on this massive ass cliffhanger. Thank you all for watching. I will catch you all later. Peace.